Okay. Good morning, everyone, and I'm delighted to be back here with Kanchan and Reciprocity. I think quickly in succession within a month or two. And Kanchan asked me the other day to speak on a subject that might be relevant to entrepreneurs. So one of the things that I thought about, and this has been a big issue in the recent past, is risks that have begun to materialize. Particularly in COVID times, we have seen a lot of risks that we thought were just risks and would never happen have materialized. And I just want to share some thoughts on how to manage risks, what are the kind of risks, how to manage risks, and how they might apply to small and medium enterprise and professionals such as us, such as ourselves. So that's going to be the subject. I have, I think, 25 minutes starting now, so there we go. So very quick agenda. I think introduction has already been done, so we'll try and skip some of that, and we'll get down to the business right away. Um, so I think, yeah, I got introduced, and what I do now is, so how do I look at, how have I looked at my life a little bit. I've always felt that putting down your vision of your life on a piece of paper always helps you, and we constantly have to put uh, priorities around different resources. And this may sound like management speak, and we do this in our work lives all the time. For example, if you work for a company and you're supposed to put a 5-year plan, and you kind of put financials around it, and you put a vision and a mission and some strategy. I actually think it works beautifully if you do it for your own life. I've done it for the last 30 years. Every 3, 4, 5 years, I write, almost literally write a presentation for my life. And you say, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? What are the things you want to do? Try and put a financial structure to your life. And I mean, I can't tell you how many batchmates and friends I have who have very little idea of their own financial structures. And I think if you do it regularly, once in 3, 4, 5 years, it just helps a lot of us to realize where we are in life and what are the things we want to do, in the balance part of your life. And I think that's one little learning, that I thought I'd share. And I have, in the last maybe 10 years, spoken about this at multiple places in multiple forums, and maybe met one on one over 200 people, and socialized this. And I've seen at least 30 or 40 people take career changing and life changing decisions. And I'm talking of people who are very, very successful CXOs, CEOs of large sized corporations. So what do I do right now? I'm engaged in mentoring, as was said, but at different levels. From a corporate board role perspective, I sit on about 5 or 6 different boards as an independent director, as a non-executive director. My last executive role was managing director of Xerox India Limited, which was 5 years ago. I left Xerox in 2015. I joined it in 2012. I know Lena left in 2009. So therefore we never met you, Lena. Hopefully we'll meet this time. The So I'm passionate about mentoring executives from a board position. I'm equally passionate about helping startups and family boards. So I sit on a couple of family advisory boards as well, helping promoter group families to sort of transform their businesses. And startups is my key passion, is my core passion. So 5 years ago, I sort of stepped off the corporate, call it treadmill, call it ladder, whatever, primarily to spend the next whatever years in sharing and learning, sharing my knowledge and experience with the startup community, with the entrepreneurial world, because I think that'll perhaps be, I thought, better use of what I would be doing. And because I was doing this whole life plan and all of that stuff, I realized that continuing another 15 years in corporate India or corporate worldwide would not add as much value to me as this could add uh, to me. So therefore, I'm spending all my time in supporting the startup ecosystem in India, and a lot of not-for-profit work around environment and water, and around education and health in the state of Uttar Pradesh for the last, 14, 15 years. So my key goal right now is to make an impact and give back to society at large. So if we come to the subject matter today, which is around COVID, what has happened is, I think we've all realized clearly that the times are uncertain and unpredictable, and it is absolutely very, very difficult to forecast, what would happen next. And this pandemic or infodemic, pandemic has become an infodemic, uh, you know, has created a lot of challenges for us in terms of, what to believe and what not to believe. And I think we are just coasting along. We're just moving along with what is being fed to us. And we all understand that there is a huge cost of this economically, particularly in the small sector, in the medium sector. I've seen at least three of the companies I used to sit on the board of. Two of them in the small and medium sector, two of them have gone down, and that's because of the kind of businesses they were in, and those businesses just don't exist anymore. I mean, some good things have happened. People have responded well, governments, organizations. I think a lot of systems have got tested. But the biggest thing that's happening is innovation. I think everybody is rethinking their strategies on how to live. So I'm on the board of an apparel company, and that apparel company overnight moved to making PPE kits and masks, and they survived for about 4 months doing that with the governments. So I think you have to, and that's a very small example of innovation. I think innovation has always been critical, but even more so, people have realized that status quo is not going to work, and a lot of people have re-engineered themselves. And I guess the other good thing has been that everybody has got more time, perhaps more than they wanted to, for self and for family. And the spirit around community. I live in a community building in Gurgaon, and one of the things that's come out, which one hadn't seen in the last 10 years, is the spirit of community living and how people can help each other. We've had enough COVID cases here as well, and how the entire community just comes out in support of people. And I think what's going to happen next. I think this is a time for a lot of us to reflect and to think and to act and to re-engineer ourselves. And obviously, I think these, as we all say, these times will pass. We do understand the world continues to be VUCA. It has been, volatile and uncertain, and now perhaps even more so, with the kind of, rapid changes that are happening, not just because of COVID, I think, but because of technology, and disruptions around technology are just taking center stage, um, and not just disruptions. I think opportunities around technology are also taking center stage. It has been uncertain and difficult. I think it will continue to be. What these times have taught us is that you have to plan for these uncertainties in the best way you can with whatever information you have. There is nothing beyond that, that much can be done. So what is the key to survive and key to thrive? I think all of you would have gone through this. We have gone through this, a time for cost re-engineering, an opportunity to look at cost, look at cash, look at liquidity. सब कहते हैं, if you have good reserves, if we've saved for a rainy day, you would survive. And I think all of us will have enough examples of people who survived this and some people who did not survive this because costs became challenging to manage. I think from a business standpoint, yeah, we have to be consumer driven on everything. I think a big change that has happened is consumer behavior is changing very, very rapidly. And this behavior, affects every business, every small business, every large business. How do you understand, what the consumer, what your customer is going to be looking for in the new world? Now that he's exposed to 10, 12 months of lockdown, uh, we all hear of the state of commercial real estate. We all hear the state of communication and travel. You and I are doing this meeting today on Zoom. Otherwise, it would have been different. I'm not so sure when life comes back to normal, people would go back to the kind of travel that they did, or and so on and so forth. So I think business transformation is a point well made. Productivity focus always needs to be there. I think managing the change always needs to be there. The openness to radical thinking. I think this is something again that's getting demonstrated in tough times. You know, how do you take some radical decisions in your business? How do you just change what you have been doing? And I gave a little example of this apparel business, but I have another company which was into marketing events called Kaleidoscope, a small business, 40, 50 people, did about 10, 12 crores, 15 crores of revenue. And this year, from March onwards, they've done about 50 lakhs. And obviously they've had to lose most people, and they are now just dramatically changed themselves into a digital events company. From a physical events company, it has become digital events company. So I think innovation initiatives are obviously, crucial to it's got stuck. Can you hear me?
I mean, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I thought I'd lost connection. It does. So coming to risk dialogues, I think all of us have sort of seen some of these things, but the main takeaway here is cash is king for businesses, and as much as possible, getting towards a variable cost model. This is a slide that was presented by KPMG, which I'm sharing with you. uh, you know, Getting to as much variable cost to your business. And I think this applies to most of our businesses that we may be running. How do you move to a model that is a little bit lean business service model? And the last thing would be on the digital push that is happening. Clearly everything is going digital. If you start looking at your risks, identifying your risks as a fundamental business. Now, these kind of frameworks exist in large companies as a process. In many of these board meetings, they get discussed as a quarterly process. But I think for small companies, we tend to not look at them in a structured fashion. We tend to probably overlook them very often because we are so busy in running our business, and we are not perhaps resourced and staffed in that fashion. But I think it's a good chance to step back and look at the kind of risks that may exist in our own businesses. And there could be business risk, there could be financial risk, there could be IT risk, there could be credit risks, people not paying you. And this is something that one first needs to figure out and think what these risks are, and then try and measure them in some way. So for example, you look at your financial statements and you say that this is the risk I can live with, and this is a risk I cannot live without. And therefore the concept of insurance then comes in, right? And the insurance comes at a cost. So measuring and assessing risk becomes an important aspect in terms of your framework. And then risk mitigation, which is really about, what do you do? Insurance, hedging, uh, diversification. So could how do you move from this business to another business, and so on and so forth. And large companies have what is called BCP, business continuity planning strategies, which are fairly well documented. Things like a company like Xerox or a company like Unilever. But I think for mid-sized and small companies, just getting some sort of feeling around the risk, the impact of the risk, and how to cover some of those risks through insurance and diversification becomes important. Yeah, risk reporting and monitoring is perhaps more for large companies, but governance of risk, I think making sure that this is a process that you follow every year, every 6 months. Have a chartered accountant look at this. We do our financial statements, which is legal compliance. We do our tax returns. I think it is important to get used to the fact that, how do you continuously look at risk? Just because times will change and things will be better doesn't mean that we lose track of the risks that we are running. I think intuitively we all do that. My intent here is to try and provide a very simplistic framework. So in a post-COVID world, for example, let me give you some examples of the risks that all of us could be facing. Fraud. As you go more digital, as you become more virtual, I think the risk of fraud and the risk of cybercrime is increasing quite dramatically. I'm sure some of us may have seen some of these things pan out, but these are risks to become aware of. I think as you go to more and more work from home, I think the risk of being compliant in a culture like the Indian society, that becomes another big issue for particularly for mid-sized companies where a lot of people with 30, 40, 50 people, a lot of companies are getting to work from home. I think we have a psychologist here. The issues around mental health and safety are becoming bigger and bigger, and particularly in the younger generation. You see articles every day. I don't think this was much of a big thing 30 years ago, But I guess the stress of technology, the stress of devices, the screen time is all causing, and all of those things are increasing. I think an average screen time today might be 8 to 10 hours, maybe 12, maybe 14 also. And if you add the mobile screen, so people are working on computers for 10 hours a day, and then you add the mobile to it in the morning and evening, it could be 14, 15 hours. I mean, that's a lot of time spent on the screen. So I think these are the kind of things that one needs to become a little bit more aware in a structured manner. Disruption and innovation. I think this is happening. This is the biggest example. I think COVID cannot say in economic downturn. So every conversation, every social meeting. Yesterday I was with a few friends. One guy is an exporter. He now makes pizzas. So he was an exporter with a couple of 100 crores, 300 crores of revenue. Of course, he's well taken care of, and his business is gone, and it's literally gone. And he now he loves making pizzas, so he actually dishes out pizzas, brilliant stuff. But I mean, that's what downturn can do to you. I don't think he ever thought that he'll want to make pizzas to sell. Uh, so I think sectors are getting wiped out. And if we see an economic downturn this year of maybe even 7, 8, 10%, it's gonna take us at least 2 more years to come back. So I think in 2022 we might be where we were in 2019. Therefore, it effectively, at least in my view, we will be losing 3 years of growth, activity, whatever it is. It could be 4. I don't think it's going to be less than 3. So I think that's a large statement. We haven't seen that in the last 50 years. Yeah, I mean, the other risks are pretty obvious, reputation and so on may not be relevant, but for large companies, I think this is an important risk to manage. And working capital and cash management is the most important thing. How do you just survive? How do you stay solvent? How do you pay your employees? How do you run your own salaries and so on and so forth? So what are young companies and startups? We all deal with a lot of startups and young companies and entrepreneurial businesses. Successful startups can become big companies, and there are enough examples in front of us in India as well, and of course globally, and they can contribute a lot to the economy. So while all of our businesses might be small, we may have ambitions and visions which are large, and we want to become significant. And I think that has to be the way we want to start thinking about our businesses. Job creation, economic creation, wealth creation, becoming employers, not employees. And I think that's what India needs as well. I mean, Kanchan is on this path of empowering entrepreneurship, which I completely love, because I've been doing that in a different way for the last 5-7 years. And I think as a country, we need it. We need, to be into nation building. We need to be making sure that, that we are all sort of aligned and working in the same direction. And I think eventually small companies is what is going to become large companies. And that's how in the next 10 years, 12 years, we might see another 30, 40, 50 large companies coming in. And what are the risks for some of these startup companies? If you look at risks in these young companies, I think evolving technologies and platforms, new technologies coming in, competition from unexpected quarters. You don't think of real competition, and it comes up from another startup. I think funding has become very, very challenging. We discussed this in another session a month ago. But the kind of capital available to young companies, to startups, is become a lot more uncertain than it was a year ago, simply because people are preserving capital. Obviously, for startups, exits are crucial. How do you create wealth? How do you get into IPOs? How do you create mergers? And all those things have become a lot more riskier today than it was. So just leaving you with a few thoughts on entrepreneurship, something that I have seen in my life, and we now practice it as a business at PadUp Ventures. It is a unique idea that you need to have, which has to be solving a real problem or a pain point. I mean, that's the fundamental basis of entrepreneurship, is to be solving a real problem. You have to obviously solve it with energy and grit. I think these points were well made in the gaming presentation that we had earlier. obviously you need to have a team that is running those ideas, a team which has complementary skills, and the point around teamwork has also been well made earlier. uh, I think technology and its understanding is becoming more and more important. And needless to say, the current generation, the younger generation, understands it. They are what I would call digital natives, as opposed to people like me, on the other side of 50, who would be digital immigrants. We immigrated into the digital age, whereas our children were born in the digital age, and they'll find it much easier. But what happens is we still tend to discuss technology and its impacts a lot, because a lot of us don't understand technology. A lot of the people who are managing companies don't understand technology, and therefore you need to have a mentor. You should have mentors who are there to pad you up for your next innings, who are willing to commit to you, who are willing to give you intellectual capital, help you learn from your mistakes, and sort of help you on the path. And the last thing is ability to network. Platforms like Reciprocity and many others, are places where you network with people with, like-minded individuals who want to grow businesses, who want to create opportunities, and so on and so forth. A very quick word on PadUp Ventures, which is the venture that I started about 5 years ago. Our core purpose is to participate in nation building. That's what we say to in our first sort of conversation: creating employers, not employees. Our vision is to become a key influencer in the startup ecosystem. So we are a startup incubator. We help startups, and we incubate startups, and we incubate other incubators to survive and to probably become, successful large businesses. And our mission is to impact over 1,000 startups in the next 7, 8, 9, 10 years, whatever it takes, with very, very structured mentoring and monitoring processes, so that we can dramatically impact the survival rates. Just to put some numbers, today, 90 to 95% of startups in the first 4 years die. That's the mortality rate in India. The rate in the Western world is about 70 to 75%. And there is some reason why the Silicon Valley and the Western world does a little bit better here. And we are trying to bring some of those systems and processes to ensure that the survival rate of young entrepreneurs and young companies in India at least goes up by 3 to 4 times. So that's it. I think, that's where I would stop. I think we may have some time